Welcome to the show. My name is Karen Holton. I am an ET experiencer and ambassador, an ascension coach, a direct channel, a shamanic guide, and I'm the host of Aliens and Astrology. Be sure to check out more of my unique content on my website, www.karenholtonhealthcoach.com, and my YouTube, Odyssey, and Telegram channels, Karen Holton TV. I can also be found on the Forbidden Knowledge News Network, www.forbiddenknowledge.news. My paranormal experiences have taught me to replace my beliefs with working theories, which evolve over time. My co-host is Dave Petrella, and although we hold two different viewpoints, we both see things from the same broad perspective, and we are both passionate about the ascension process.
Hi, I'm Dave Petrella. I'm an astrologer, biologist, spiritual guide, and Oak Island theorist. You can find me on Facebook and YouTube at Dave Petrella, and on Instagram at Dave Petrella12. Please feel free to send me an email through my YouTube page. I'm happy to join Karen in our search for truth. We can find the answers we're looking for about health, science, extraterrestrial intelligence, and many other related topics. We're glad to have you join us today for the show.
Hi, everybody. We're really excited to bring you the second episode of season 1 of Aliens and Astrology. We already just had the introduction, and I want to thank everybody for subscribing, for liking, for sharing our show. And I'm just ever so grateful. And I just want to tell everybody too that our Aliens and Astrology group on Facebook is growing very fast. You're welcome to join us. It's a public group. We have over 200 people already on there, and the people are posting all kinds of amazing stuff to do with aliens, stuff to do with UFOs, stuff to do with astrology, stuff to do with all kinds of alternative spirituality. It's really getting exciting. So if you haven't done so already, I highly recommend that you join our group. So today, Dave and I are going to talk about dimensions. And I know this word is probably open to interpretation, but I'm going to present some information first that I came across that I found quite helpful. I don't want you to believe anything I have to say. I want you to do your own research. And then, but I'm going to show you where I'm getting this information in case you want to go down that same rabbit hole. And then then we're going to have a short commercial break, and then Dave is going to talk about what he knows about dimensions, and then we'll have just a bit of a discussion afterwards. So I hope you find this as interesting as Dave and I do, because I know that there is so much more than just living in the three-dimensional construct. And Dave and I are both passionate about the ascension process, and it is the holding of the higher frequency that allows for the ascension process, and that is what allows us superpowers like switching dimensions and timelines and all that other really, really exciting stuff. So before we start, I just want to tell you a little bit of backstory to my information. So this was about, 2007, maybe earlier than that, maybe 2006, 2005. And I was having all these symptoms and all these and major spiritual awareness downloads, but I was having these physical, emotional, and spiritual symptoms, and nobody knew what I was talking about. Everybody just thought I was a crazy person. And I met a woman whose name is Eva Braun, and I was talking to her about it, and because she told me that she was involved in a group that not only works with the Earth's frequencies, but also is very much influenced by extraterrestrial contact. And she said, "Oh, I know exactly what's wrong with you." And she gave me this information that I'm now going to present to you. So, Dave, do you have anything you want to say before I get into this?
Well, just, thanks for having me back, Karen. I'm excited. Everyone's excited about the information, and I'm pleased that the group is growing and people are participating and people find it interesting and helpful and useful and all these great things. And this topic is particularly important, especially where we are now in the state of the world, I think, to start to understand a little bit better, maybe shed a little bit more light on the topic. Just the baseline, really, I just want to say one or two sentences about why it's so important to me, basically, is that, many of the ancient traditions, they teach that this is one world out of infinite worlds. It's one existence, it's one go around, it's one lifetime. And I believe that it goes on and on as long as the spirit wills for it to go on. I do believe in karma as well, which is a subset of that issue. But the thing is that I tend to think of the earth as a created system, and it's created with specific laws. And if we understand what those laws are, then we can actually have a lot of success within the system. And that's what I endeavor to do with astrology and with Eastern medicine principles and everything, because there are actually things that you can replicate. I am a scientist, and so I look for the information repeating over and over so I can draw good conclusions. And I call them working conclusions, by the way, because it's always possible it could technically change. But when I move on to a new topic, I don't move on until I'm satisfied with that I came to the best possible conclusion I could with what I had available. So, but anyway, you're right, Karen, is that the higher the frequency, in your body and in your mind and in your heart, really, they all work together. The more, let's say, divine information you're going to be able to access. It could be coming through psychic means, it could be coming through auditory means, it can be coming through visual, it could be really anything at all. So there's not like a limit to how you would receive information. And then conversely, if the energy is very low, then you're going to be actually limited what you can bring in and also what you can put out, which is why it's so important to be able to work with the energy in the body. It gives you access to what I call the 21 dimension system, which is what I say is our solar system. There's 21 dimensions, I would say local dimensions within the solar system. And, there's different principles. I'll go into that in a few minutes after you do your presentation. But it's the important part is that we have access to these. It's within our control. We just need to do a little bit, actually probably a lot more work in terms of focusing and understanding what the actual scientific principles are, because unfortunately, it's not all just prayer and meditation. You also have the physiology is a real thing. You have to work with the fact that you have a solid body, in this existence. And that's difficult because energy can't run cleanly through a solid structure. It has to run through the liquids first, and then the liquids deliver to the solids. And, you have to get it all working together. It's actually quite hard, but the basis of Ayurveda has the answers for you with that. So that's really about it right now, Karen. And I'll just, if you don't mind, I'll just add a comment or two as you go along if there's something I'd like to add.
Sure, Dave. Okay, so I'm going to go to screen share now. And we'll take a look at this. Just move us out of the way a little bit. So the information that my friend Eva Braun shared with me comes from certain manuals, and I'm not plagiarizing this information. Clearly, this is not my own personal information, and I'm just showing you the cover of the manual where I got the information. And if you want to study this further, I recommend that you go out and buy these manuals. They're available at all the popular bookstores. And they were created by Ashiana Deanne. And she wrote a series of books called the Voyagers series, and what was the other one called? The Sleeping Abductees. And she's fairly well known, and all this information is copyrighted, and this is her information. But it really explains a lot, let's put it that way. And again, I don't think this is the whole truth, the absolute truth, but this is glimpses into what other people and their research is telling us, so that we can get a bit of a grasp on things. So I want to start off by reading a bit about these symptoms, because there's a lot of people who are having these, what I call ascension symptoms, that have no idea what the problem is. And they keep going to the medical industry looking for answers, and, you know, they get sent for all the tests and nobody can find out what's wrong with them. And that's because this is something that's not even recognized by medical science. So this is taken from section 3, symptoms of spontaneous silicate matrix activation. So that is what Ashiana Deanne calls this, and I would just simply call it part of the ascension process, where we do change, and we do receive gifts, amazing gifts, that is definitely worth the effort to practice some of this information. So there are mental, emotional, and physical symptoms of silicate matrix activation, and they're often easily misdiagnosed. Conventional methods of symptom treatment can worsen the condition, and Keylontic science technology is needed to prepare the body, mind, spirit system for silicate matrix activation. Now, there are other routes that you can take. I don't believe this is the only route, but this is definitely a route that you can take. And so I'm going to show you some charts, the potential mental symptoms, the potential emotional symptoms, and the potential physical symptoms. And by the way I was able to relieve some of these symptoms was by doing guided meditations and affirmations and all the kind of spiritual stuff that we're getting used to today. So if you are having any of these symptoms, please don't feel like you're stuck to have to suffer for the rest of your life. No, this is just part of the process, because the body is changing on a biological level. We're changing on an emotional or psychological level, and we're changing on a spiritual level, and that can often cause some significant discomfort. I'm just going to read from the book because it's a little easier for me to see with my glasses here.
And Karen, I just want to add to that. I agree
Sure.
with all of that, by the way, but I do want to add that, you know, the carbon-based life form, the carbon-based biological life form, which essentially is how it works on the earth here. I've heard many times, even back to the beginning when I first started with spirituality, probably in 2008, that the upgrade for carbon is actually silica or silicon based. And what's interesting about that is that we use that in computers. And this brings up a whole big AI topic that I know we're not going to go into today, but maybe in the future.
Yeah.
But no, you know, that is what's happening, is that you have to, you're upgrading your cellular structure. And it's, if your body's not set up for that, you get an overload of electric current coming in, then it essentially kind of fries the system. If you don't, the way I explain it is you have to have the conduit set up first. You have to have the proper, let's say, transportation grid in place before the energy comes in, or it's going to create serious havoc, which is exactly what you're explaining.
That's often comes along with the Kundalini release if it's not done properly, and if your body temple's not prepared. Now, my body temple was not prepared, I'll tell you, and I had a lot of these symptoms, and I'll just read some of them to you. jitteriness, mental confusion, difficulty concentrating, lethargy, hyperactivity, manic depressive like or obsessive compulsive like symptoms, idea polarization, bipolar disorder like symptoms, periodic short or long-term memory loss, emergence of lucid dreaming, reincarnational memory, out-of-body episodes, seeing auras, psychic abilities, hearing inner voices as EM impulses from higher identity levels or sub-personality fragments, begin translating into inner audio or visual experience, telepathic or channeled contact with other dimensions, other dimensional inhabitants, and spontaneous periods of illumination. What's interesting about this too is it was after I discovered all of this. I was having some ET contact, but I wasn't remembering it. And it was after I discovered this information and did the meditations and the visualizations, the guided visualizations, and other things like changing my diet and stuff, that I had the most amazing ET experience down the road, probably about 5 years later. And so I absolutely do believe that the higher, the more frequency we're able to hold, the better we're going to, the better or easier it is for us to have contact with what I would call the spiritual realms. And I would include ET contact in there as well. So slide 4 is the potential emotional symptoms of silicate matrix activation, emotional clearing, spontaneous release of repressed emotional trauma memory, nightmares, amplification of existing emotional imbalances, overreaction to everyday issues, periods of excessive fear or foreboding, laughing or crying jags, feelings of detachment or displacement in unusual surroundings, depression, despondency, rapid processing of karmic issues, strong emotional reincarnation. Sorry about that. Strong emotional reincarnation or parallel earth double, bleeding through or recognition of others' incarnational relationships, increase or development of phobias, spontaneous changes or shifts in emotional relationships, periods of extreme love, joy or rapture, and spontaneous deeper appreciation of things mundane. So you actually start to see the sacred within the mundane, periods of great vitality and peace, and a cyclic roller coaster of all of the above. So I started to be aware of contact from my higher guides, my higher self, and I started to have visual overlays that were in imaginative overlays, but just like you can see something in your imagination, for me, it was overlaid over what I was seeing with my eyes, so that I was picking up both at the same time. And, you know, you try telling people about this stuff, they just think you're crazy or they get scared. You know, a lot of people can't handle having their paradigms shook up. Personally, I thrive on it, as probably does Dave. You know, we're interested in what's deep and underneath everything else.
Yeah, and you know, and the thing, Karen, too, is that, like I was saying before, is that the Earth system is one conditioned system. That it has a specific set of rules and laws that are local, but that's, I want to emphasize the word local, rules and laws. But actually, anything that you can think of is possible, and anything you can think of can be created in various energy gradients, which would brings various levels of materialization or non-materialization. So actually, anything at all is possible. Just in this, literally, there's absolutely no restrictions. But if you're living in someone else's or something else's created system, then it really makes sense for you to pay attention to the local laws, because if you don't know what they are, you're working against the system. And if you want to have success, you know, we have to understand what we're dealing with.
Right. Well said, Dave. So the potential physical symptoms are periodic hypersensitivity to sound, light, and or electromagnetic emanations, occasional hot or cold flashes, shakiness, heart palpitations, temporary or cyclic eye, ear, joint, or bone pain, ear ringing or buzzing, breathing difficulties, barometric sensitivity, increase of allergies of all kinds, hormonal imbalances, thyroid over or under activity, sudden weight loss, energy rushes, whiteouts, seizures, change in sleeping habits, amplification of disease conditions or spontaneous healing, horizontal striations or vertical ridging in the nails, sudden graying or loss of hair, accelerated decay, cracking or breaking of teeth or bone, weakening of the immune system, visual perception of light, movements and manifestations, sudden internal thumps or jolts, felt or heard inside the skull, headaches and nausea, intestinal difficulties, spleen anomalies, feeling of electrical energy running through the body or along the spine, swelling at the base of the head, sensitive spots on the skull, patches of skin that suddenly fall asleep or tingle, sensed heaviness, lightness, expansion or contraction of the body and awareness, matter density fluctuations, increased vitality and reduction of aging if the silicate matrix is activated properly, difficulty regulating body temperature, amplification of behavioral anomalies, temporary violent or aggressive outbursts, feeling of skin crawling, increase or loss of sexual drive, feeling of burning in the palms or on the soles of the feet, food cravings, periods of mild dehydration, need for less sleep and less food if the silicate matrix is activated properly. Then at the bottom it says individual experience will be determined by the condition of the silicate matrix in the gene code and by the level of personal mastery over the subtle energy bodies and multidimensional identity. Another thing I experienced that's not mentioned here is seeing light when I close my eyes, and not in my imagination, actually seeing the light that's from my light body when I close my eyes, which I thought was really interesting. So all of these things, or a few of these things, may indicate that you're going through the ascension process and you may not even know about it. So that's why I wanted to bring this up. And it was such a large part of my ascension process, my continuing ascension process. I really have to take really good care of the temple body on so many levels in order for me to feel well, which means that my body's now cooperating, and part of that is the awakening that happens before the ascension. But that's another thing we'll talk about maybe on another show, because I got quite a bit to show you here. So
excellent list. Truly amazing list.
Thank you, Dave. Yeah, I thought it was good. That's why I'm presenting it. And as I mentioned before, this is not my information, but this is sort of the route that I took when I was going through my awakening process. So here we see section 5, energy running skills, and the 15 chakra system. So this is how we're getting into the discussion of dimensions today. So the physical symptoms are often indicators that our frequency is raising, our body, our emotions, our spiritual self is all changing. And what that will allow us to do is to be more aware of our chakra systems, and that leads into being able to move and shift through dimensions. So the processes of directing silicate matrix DNA activations and the mechanics of integration of the multidimensional spiritual identity are both facilitated by an awareness of the subtle energy bodies and the chakra system. Chakra centers and levels of identity correspond directly to the dimensional frequency bands of the 15-dimensional matrix. Through understanding the placement of the chakras in relation to the body, one can learn to consciously direct the bioenergetic field and influence the morphogenic field, DNA, physical body, and consciousness. Spiritual and biological evolution can be simultaneously accelerated by using Kalantic science techniques to run energy in specific ways through the chakra system. So those exercises that Ava taught me, she basically would bring over the DVDs that were created by Ashiana Diane and her organization. And that was how I was able to actually do the meditations and the visualizations. And I'm telling you, it really, really helped quite a lot. Now, here's an image of 3 sets of chakras. A lot of people are really familiar. So you'll see the numbers beside the C are C1 is the base, C2 sacral, C3 solar plexus, C4 heart, C5 throat or thyroid or throat chakra. C6 is the third eye, pituitary, and C7 is the crown and the pineal. But then we also have 8 morphogenic chakras that are represented by the letters MC in this diagram. I'll just run through them without giving you the number because, well, anyway, MC8, which is your secondary, starts your secondary set of chakras. That's your thymus, which is cosmic core. MC9 is the thalamus, galactic core. MC10 is the galactic morph 1. I think that's morphogenic 1. MC11 is the galactic morphogenic 2. MC12 is the Earth star. MC13 is the Earth core. MC14 is the universal morphogenic 1. And MC15 is the universal morphogenic number 2. So universal Merkaba fields link the 12-dimensional human morphogenic field to the planetary, galactic, and universal morphogenic fields. The outer morphogenic levels of auric field sets human morphogenic imprint into unified fields of dimensions 8 to 15, created by dimensional Merkaba fields 8 to 15. And this links to the inner layers of our auric field and our body via MC's 8 to 15 dimensions. Inner levels of the auric field sets human morphogenic imprint into dimensions. Then there's the star crystal seals, and then the 15 star crystal seals are our third set of chakras. And they're often called stargates because they actually allow us to do interdimensional travel, but also interplanetary and intergalactic travel, which is what happened to me and how I was able to do intergalactic travel to meet the folks aboard the big ship. Now, if you want to know more about my extraterrestrial experiences, visit my YouTube channel and check out the Fringe View or my website, where I have posted quite a bit of information about that. So you'll see near the bottom, there's like a little cup with the top being wide, and then on the other side, like a little cup facing down. And so the one going up is the magnetic Merkaba spiral. It's spirals magnetic base tone energy upward in a counterclockwise rotation. And on the right-hand side, electrical Merkaba spirals electrical overtone energy downward in a clockwise rotation. So some of you might be familiar with the Merkaba. So that's really what we're talking about now. We've got Merkaba that flows up, and we've got Merkaba that flows down. And so this is not an exhaustive lesson on the 3 sets of chakras. It's just to show you basically how they're laid out in the body and how they basically just where they are and how they interact with each other.
Yeah, Karen, can I comment on that for one
You
one
sure
moment?
can, Dave. You sure can.
Okay, so I mean, first of all, I agree with everything. I mean, I really can't say anything is perfect. It's also a Taurus field, of course, when you have that
Yes.
shape, which is
Yes.
also, an hourglass shape. If people remember from The Wizard of Oz, there's a lot of references to time travel in The Wizard of Oz. It's just a phenomenal movie in so many ways. So that is the Taurus field. It's one way to look at it, and it's very similar also to the Star of David, of course, which actually you would just have to flip both of them. But what it is it's incorporating the opposite principles into a unification. And so that's why you have one spinning the opposite way and then one spinning the other way. And so they actually complete each other and form a cohesive unit.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Dave. Well said. So then this is another book, again, by Ashiana Diane. It's called Angelic Realities. It's a bit of a handbook. This is what it looks like in case you want to order it. And I actually recommend that you do. It's quite interesting. It's packed with so much information. It's taking me years just to kind of get the gist of what's going on. So in this book, there is this diagram, very interesting. On the left-hand side, it says one 15-dimensional time matrix with 5 harmonic universes. So most people today are familiar that there are parallel universes, parallel timelines, different, the multiverse, different, us even in different realities. And this is a bit of a diagram to explain some of that. And it says sorry, I gotta take my glasses off to read this. It's funny, as I get older, my eyesight gets better and I don't need reading glasses anymore. But anyway, a dimension is a full frequency band or repeated sequence of flashing on and off of scalar standing wave points within the morphogenic field. So just translate that. What it means is in every reality, like the one we're in right now, we are flashing on and off at so fast that we're not even aware of it. So in these other harmonic universes, things are flashing on and off, but they're alternative or alternate with ours. And they're all alternating, flashing on and off, forming the morphogenic field, which we think is reality. But it's actually a construct. But you notice, sorry, what?
Oh, sorry, Karen. That's what allows spirits to phase in and out of dimensions as well. Is that you're just flashing you're flashing out of one and into another one. But the fields, and I'll talk about this in a minute, but the fields are all essentially stacked inside of each other like a Russian nesting doll. Yeah. So they exist in the same space, but at different wavelengths and different intensities. And they are obscured from each other because of different rates of vibration, of course, and different fields and things like that. I just want to say really fast, if someone wants to see how that works in real time, just just be careful, please. But wave your hand in front of your face fairly fast, and it will start to become invisible. And if you can, I would not encourage this, but the faster the vibration, it actually does become invisible. And if you look at like a hummingbird, you can't see its wings when it's, you just see like a blur. And you can like see behind the wing into the tree because it's moving so fast. That's how this stuff works. That's how you can phase in and out of dimensions, just the vibrational speed.
Yes, absolutely, Dave. Thanks for bringing that up. So you can see the circles down the center are the harmonic universes. They run 1 to 5 in this particular diagram. So we're looking here at a unit that includes 5 harmonic universes. And then the egg shape that surrounds them all, and there's different levels of that. Those are the 5 harmonic universes in one 15-dimensional time matrix. And there's more than one. If you look at the outside line, it says magnetic repulsion zones create separation between the harmonic universes, and 3 levels of the non-dimensionalized energy matrix within which time matrices reside You can see down on near the bottom of that diagram, the triadic level, the polaric level, and the ecadic level. I know it's quite a bit of information, but it'll make sense as I go on. Frequency bands and sub-frequency bands within the 15-dimensional scale. Now we're looking at the right-hand side of this diagram. So you'll see the little box at the top on the right-hand side, dimensions, dimension 3, dimension 2, dimension 1, and then SFB. And that stands for sub-frequency bands. So frequency bands are cyclic, repeated sequences of flashing on and off of scalar standing wave points that create the appearance of manifest wave spectra within a dimensional system. Sub-frequency bands are shorter cycle segments of the longer flashing on and off sequence of the full frequency band. Excuse me. Frequency and sub-frequency bands make up the foundation wave strata of dimensions. Then on the left-hand side of that box that I pointed out, there is one harmonic universe composed of 3 dimensions, each dimension composed of 12 sub-frequency bands for a total of 36 sub-frequency bands in one harmonic universe. And it says 3D 3D per one harmonic universe, or 3 dimensions in one harmonic universe times 12 sub-frequency bands per dimension equals 36 sub-frequency bands per harmonic universe. So here we see that each harmonic universe is divided up into dimensions, and each dimension is divided up into these sub-frequency bands. So right below what I just read, you'll see the 5 harmonic universes in one 15-dimensional matrix. You can see, harmonic universe 1, 4, 3, 2, 5, and then how many, they each hold 3 dimensions, and then they each hold the 12 sub-frequency bands. 15 dimensions with 12 sub-frequency bands each creates 180 sub-frequency bands in one 15-dimensional matrix. And the 15 frequency bands or dimensions and the 180 sub-frequency bands within the 5 harmonic universes of one 15-dimensional time matrix. So there you go. So I mean, basically what it is illustrating in this image is that there is not just one universe. There is not just one reality. It's all can be broken down depending on our frequency and what we're able to hold into all these other realities that we basically are not even aware of until we discover them. So the last manual I just want to look at, again by Ashiana Diane. You can order these for yourself if you're interested. This is the introduction to Kalantic Morphogenic Science, Kalantic Science for Daily Living. Now, Kalantic Science is basically quantum physics, but it is a very high level understanding of how quantum physics work. The morphogenic field is the field that we perceive as reality, because all of our senses just take in electromagnetic information that we perceive as being solid, or that we perceive as being our reality. And, you know, it's interesting that you can't really ignore the natural laws, like what you said, Dave, because you could end up falling off a cliff or hurting yourself. Like there's real life consequences, even though, you know, it's not as, everything is not as solid as we perceive it to be. There are still real life consequences. So in chart 2B, dimensions, kalons, and fire letters. So this is like further subdivisions that we just talked about, but it's worth mentioning again. So number 1 is dimensions represent scalar fields composed of specific patterns of electro, tonal frequency, and light spectra. Number 2, each dimension is comprised of 12 primary subfrequency bands. So you can see the diagram on the right is the dimensions, and then each dimension broken down into the subfrequency bands, and the subfrequency bands are further broken down. Each of the 12 primary subfrequency bands in one dimension represents a fixed point of tonal frequency upon which the standing scalar wave pattern of kaolin crystals is formed. Now, there's a lot more information in this manual, so I'm just kind of trying to give you an overview without causing anybody's brain to explode, because if you haven't heard this before, it might be a bit overwhelming. But this is a model. So this is a model of reality. It doesn't necessarily cover 100% truth. It doesn't necessarily mean it's not true. It's just another way of looking at things to try to get a grasp of how wonderfully made we are and the potential we have, which is just absolutely incredible. So here you see a picture of a person in the middle and rings going around from the inside to the outside. And these are actually different levels of who we are that we don't perceive in the three-dimensional reality. Number one is what they call the Nada Hova, the incarnate ID, which is your subconscious, your instinctual, and your reasoning minds. Then comes your Alpha Hova, which is what called the soul matrix, and it includes your astral, your archetype, and your angelic minds. The number three is what they call the Bet Jehovah, which is an oversoul matrix ID. It's catharic, monadic, and keriatic minds. Then you have your Mahara Hova, which is your avatar matrix ID, which is Christiac, Buddhiac, and Nirvanic minds. And then we have our Raja Hova, which is our Rishi matrix ID, which includes that at that point, we are now interfacing with and sort of overlapping with the universal consciousness mind. Number six is the Tenotra Hova, which is the geomantic entity matrix ID, which actually is what the ascended master levels, the very first of the ascended master levels. So when you see people who can levitate and do all kinds of amazing things, they are in touch with that level of their being. We all have it. It's just whether or not we've made contact. Then there is the Rishi A matrix ID, which is, again, this is ascended master level 2, and the Prima Hova, which is the ascended master level 3. Personal spiritual evolution is the process of progressively expanding the personality to embody the higher stations of identity and the morphogenic crystal body. Through this process, at one-ment with our spiritual identity and God consciousness is achieved. Integration of the higher identity progressively changes the nature of the biological form. So biological and spiritual evolution are actually the very same thing, because we are an integrated whole. Chart 3B is the 15 chakras and the 144 fire letters and the 12 geomancies of the human cellular alphabet. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Please feel free to pause the show. I would recommend that if you're listening to this show in an audio podcast, please do come and watch the audio video version of it, available on my website and available on my YouTube channel, Odyssey, all the different platforms that are listed above. And then check it out and then give yourself some time to sort of absorb it. So you see on the left side, you see from 1 to 13, these are your primary and your secondary chakras. In human morphogenetic crystal body structure, there are 15 primary chakra centers or vortices through which energy from the universal morphogenetic field flows through and sustains the physical body and the identity stations. And again, I'm not going to get a lot into that because I'm trying to give you the gist. I don't want to give you too much information because, like I said, I don't want anyone's head to explode. Chart 3C is the 15 chakras and the 15 levels of the bioenergetic field. So you can see the diagram in the center, and it sort of shows all the layers of who we really are. 7 inner biofield levels and the 8 outer biofield levels. And I'm just going to read off what they are. I'm not going to get into the details. So start off with the incarnate, then we move to the soul matrix, then the oversoul matrix, then the avatar matrix, then the rishi matrix, the frequency bands of each of the 15 dimensions processed through the chakra and bioenergetic field level with the corresponding number. So all of this is necessary before we want to start jumping dimensions, or I'm going to be doing a show in October with Chris Matthew on the Forbidden Knowledge News channel. And it's going to be about my real life experiences shifting reality. I've actually done it a lot and had some amazing results. And the only time I don't get results is when I just don't use it. And what would be holding me back? Oh, all kinds of things. Like, for instance, self-esteem, or it could be just that we're afraid of success. Like, so many people are so familiar with failure. Failure is easy. You fail, you pick yourself up and you try again. But success, what do we do with that? We're not really used to handling success. But as we realize we're worth it, that it's our birthright to be successful, then what happens is we start to get to that point where we start to use the skills and all the things that mother never told you, or the pastor never told you, or the government never told you, so that you can start having a really magical life. I'm just going to read a little bit more from this page in the conclusion. In this presentation, we have been presented with a comprehensive model of the structure of reality and identity, through which prior reality interpretations can be united with a greater picture of understanding. We have learned of cosmic structure, the context within which our evolution occurs, and the hidden mechanics of evolution as being the process of dimensional ascension through progressive cellular transmission. Now, I don't think when they talk about evolution, I think they're talking about us and our ascension process. They're not talking about us coming from monkeys and that sort of thing. Okay, so the morphogenetic fields and the sacred science of Kelonta, the crystalline blueprints behind matter and consciousness, and the fire letter and geomancy mechanics through which morphogenetic fields function, the anatomy of multidimensional identity and the morphogenetic crystal body, our personal, indelible connection to the divine, the point of union between science and spirituality. We have discovered our hidden evolutionary potential to reclaim our immortality and re-enter the cycles of higher evolution through activation of the silicate matrix crystal gene. And we have explored some beginning measures we can take to prepare our bodies for time acceleration and continuum shift, while simultaneously improving our health, creating personal protection, and accelerating the process of our biological and spiritual evolution. So that's it from for what was from Ashiana Diane, and I couldn't explain it any better, near as well, and that is why I'm using her material. So I just got a couple more images to share. This is an image of one of the classifications of the chakra system. And you'll notice in this image, there's one below the feet and there's 3 above the head. And there are other ways to slice and dice this. Dave is going to go through a bit of that information, but I just want to show you there's so much more than those 7 initial chakras that most people are familiar with. Now, in this image is how the energy flows within the body and without. So our left side is our feminine side, and we are a receiver of energy. And our right side is our masculine side, and that is the sender out of energy. And so energy is coming in the left side and it's flowing out the right side, but it's also flowing within the body. It's circling along the legs on its way up, and it's coming from the head and circling its way back down. That's the Merkaba that we already talked about. And then, of course, this thing that looks like two snakes in the middle, that would be your Kundalini energy as well. Here are some images on the left. You will see some Kirlian photography that shows the life force or the energy that's in the human body, as well as plants and everything that's living. And on the two images on the right are from the Heart Math Institute. The heart is more powerful than the brain. The heart is about 100,000 times stronger electrically and up to 5,000 times stronger magnetically than the brain. Our thoughts and emotions affect the heart's magnetic field, which energetically affects those in our environment, whether or not we're even conscious of it. Now, this is interesting. This is a chart that I actually made up to show people another aspect of your primary and your secondary chakra system. So the energy body, what is it and what is its purpose? We have 12 senses. We have 6 physical and we have 6 energetic senses. We have 7 chakras, 7 primary physical chakras, and 7 secondary energetic chakras. And then the third set I call stargates because they allow us to do the most amazing space travel, you name it, move timelines. It's incredible. And the light body is the total energetic self. So I just want to direct you. Notice there's color columns because there's colors associated with the chakra system. So on the left-hand side, we see the red, that would be your root chakra, and we progress up towards the top of the head, which you will see is the band that's in violet. And so you have our physical senses are also tied to our chakras. So for instance, our root chakra is connected to our sense of smell, our sacral chakra to taste, our solar plexus to sight, our heart chakra to touch, our throat chakra to hearing. Our third eye is connected to our gut reaction. That's why our gut is part of our sensory system that allows us to know what's good, what's bad, what's up, what's down. That's a whole way of perceiving. And then the violet one is the gateway, the god, the goddess, the state of joy or the bliss. Then there's also organs that correspond. I'll just read them from left and right quickly. There's the nose, the mouth, the eyes, the skin, the ears, the gut, and consciousness. I consider in this category or in this classification system, consciousness is like an organ, even though it's, well, not physical. And then there's your chakras, as I already mentioned. They also correspond to your glands, everything from your adrenal gland, reproductive, pancreas, thymus, thyroid and parathyroid, pituitary and pineal. Then, of course, there's the color system. And then we go into our secondary set of chakras, which allow us our different, what we would call ESP. Okay, that includes our light body, sensations, our perception, and our energetic and secondary chakras. So starting with the red column on the left, there's retrocognition, then mediumship, clairvoyance, psychometry, telepathy, precognition, and telekinesis. These are actually all part of one thing, but we're just showing here how they correspond to the chakra system. So that's how much potential power and how integrated we are just on that very first and second chakra system. So it's good to be aware of it. The other thing I just want to close out by saying is that the frequency we hold often is determined by how we're feeling emotionally. And you'll see on the right-hand side, there's a downward spiral, includes worry, discouragement, revenge, jealousy, and on and on. Now, don't go to despair if you're in any of these states. This is perfectly natural. But every single state, from even to the very lowest, which is fear, grief, depression, powerlessness, or victim orientation, there's always a fairly easy way to flip it to the one higher. And we just keep flipping it to the one higher. We keep working on our emotions until we get to the point of anger, which is 17. What I love about anger is it's the most powerful emotion. It gives us the energy to make the changes we need to make in order to have a better life. And eventually we get up to the spiral on the left-hand side. Now we're starting to come into contentment, hopefulness, positive expectation, belief, passion, and the top is joy, knowledge, empowerment, freedom, love, and appreciation. So we want to do the work necessary, and it often includes the unpopular and uncomfortable process of what we call shadow work, or the dark night of the soul, so that we can deal with these negative, strong negative emotions. And we want to get into the upward spiral of emotions that actually elevate our frequency or our energy. And then again, I just want to show you some other correspondences. You're probably familiar with these. It shows on the left the chakras and what they deal with, and then on the right is what blocks them. So for instance, the base chakra deals with survival, and it's blocked by fear. So this is another reason why you want to go back and you want to elevate those emotions we're carrying around with us. And the sacral deals with pleasure, but it's blocked by guilt. The solar plexus deals with willpower, but it's blocked by shame. The heart chakra deals with love, but it's blocked by grief. And the throat chakra deals with truth, but it's blocked by lies. And the sorry, getting tired from reading all this.
The third eye, the brow
Thank
chakra.
you. The third eye deals with insight and it's blocked by illusion. And then the crown chakra deals with cosmic energy and it's blocked by ego attachment. And so here's just the chakras again, roughly how they're laid out in the body. And there's all kinds of charts you can find online that show how each of these chakras is also tied into a different part of our body. So our physical health also depends on it. So I know that's quite a lot to share, but I think it's important. And for those that are hungry for the deeper truths, I think it will be very, very beneficial. So we're going to go to a short commercial break, and then we're going to come back and Dave's going to give his presentation. And yeah, I think you'll find it very, very interesting. Before we go to commercial break, Dave, is there anything briefly you want to share just regarding my presentation?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it's all excellent information. I think one of the biggest things is because even with astrology, you know, you can actually, there's many actual correct ways to I was going to say corral, that's not really the right word. But basically, if you have a big blueprint, there's different ways of separating it and piecing it out into different compartments. I suppose that's the best way to say it. So even with astrology is that I do it one way, other people do it different ways, you know, but there are correct ways to do it. And then there are also incorrect ways to do it. But there's actually, and it goes with many things in life, in my viewpoint, there's actually many correct ways to do things. There's many incorrect ways to do things, I would argue. So in terms of when you're trying to organize the dimensions, you know, what system to use, etc. Actually, what you had mentioned, of course, the base seven chakras, we all know, a lot of us probably are familiar with that. And I'm going to go, I actually already mentioned the 21 chakra system, which is what I use, or the 21 dimension system. And it's actually very easy to see that 7 times 3 is 21. So another way to look at it, for me, it's just a different way of dividing it, but it's still legitimate and it's still valid. based on it's basically based on what you want to put into the spotlight. What are you trying to highlight? What aspects you trying to highlight, and that will inform how you actually differentiate and define things. So no, I mean, I fully support everything you presented. I agree with almost 100% of it. Actually, I can't really say much. That doesn't happen very often. And it's interesting, Karen, because when we first met, this is actually kind of how we started work together, is that you had brought information to the table, and I was amazed, and I was trying to figure out how you got that information, because it was nearly identical to what I teach. And I go in with the scientific approach, I'm pulling data, I'm drawing conclusions and everything. And you go in, at least with this presentation, from a reference standpoint. I mean, I know you have experience too, but in terms of how the lady that wrote this up was defining things, I agree, she did an absolutely phenomenal job. And then the last thing I wanted to say was that it's also it's a very fractal system. So no matter how you're I'm just looking for that word again. No matter how you are organizing, that's a good word, how you're organizing the system, you do want to be thinking about fractals, because everything essentially, I would argue, is fractal, at least in the physical universe. You're always going to have things contained within. Basically, you'll have a reproduction of the exact same system contained inside the system, and then inside that reproduction, you're going to have another reproduction inside that. And that is actually a really great way to organize anything, whether it's a universe or your computer system or your body. Especially the DNA. All the information that you need is there. The last thing before the commercial break is that the last slide you brought up with looking at what blocks, like the driving factor, and then what blocks the driving factor. It's a very, very dualistic principled approach in terms of the physical world. It's essentially kind of how it works. There's always going to be a counterpoint to every point. And again, that's actually not in every system. That's in the Earth system. I feel very comfortable saying that. It doesn't have to be that way. You can actually, in a different created system, you can actually polarize things if that's your intention, and make it so that you actually don't see the opposite of that. That's very high level quantum physics, and that's something like you were saying before. We need to have high enough focused energy in our bodies to be able to have that ability, and that's of course what we're really focusing on and kind of driving at with what we're teaching here. But it is always the plus side and then the minus side, and then there's also the neutral side, which is actually what makes up the three, which is oftentimes called the Trinity. So you have the neutral principle, and then you have the two on the sides. And so the last thing I'm going to say is that the seven, I think I brought this up in a previous show we did, Karen, but the 7 vices and 7 virtues, those are the 7 chakras. They're also sometimes called the 7 gatekeepers. I mean, it's the 7 planets, it's the 7 days of the week, it's the 7 notes of the scale. It's the 7 colors, and it's all the same thing. They're direct correspondences. So if we can begin to understand that, it's actually pretty simple. But if you've never seen it in like a flow chart, and I think I do have one coming up here, then it's going to be hard to see how they all correspond to each other. But actually, it's all the same system, and that's called, it's actually essentially called syncretism. And I would like to recognize my friend Santos Bonacci. He's one of the finest syncretisms on the syncretist on the planet. I've been on his show before. We should probably have him on too, Karen. He'd be a great guest.
Oh yeah, we'll have to have him on.
So
we're going to start doing two. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so drawing everything together into one cohesive system and showing the correspondences, that's essentially syncretism. And if you look across the world, all the pieces, it's like a very big puzzle, and all the pieces are scattered among all the different continents and cultures. And what I've really focused on trying to do is not discriminating between any of the information systems. And if you're open to it and you're willing to listen, I mean, I might have been waiting 10 years for one piece of information that if I hadn't talked to someone from, Botswana or something like this, in a place that most people don't even know about, I would never have gotten that information, and I needed that information. And so then I have that piece, and I can put it, I don't keep it off the side. I put it into where it belongs in the puzzle. And I have a running database, I guess, in my mind, I would say, maybe hopefully one day in a book or something, to try to integrate everything, because we're all humans. And I fully believe that the original teachings, before any of the cultures or any of the religions or anything, it was based in natural law, which is based in, to some extent, universal law. It's not the same necessarily, but there's three items. There's astrology, which deals with the stars and the planets. There's the biology or physiology aspect, which deals with life, especially in the physical form. And then there's the spirituality aspect, which deals with the moral system and your integrity structure and all those kinds of things. If you have those three in place, in my view, you don't necessarily need a religion to structure it, because I believe they actually were the original ways to structure it. You have all those three in place, you're good to go.
Right. Well said, Dave. Thank you so much for your input. We'll be right back with Dave Petrella in just a minute after this commercial break. Don't skip over this brief commercial break. Dave and I have some important information for you. You may have noticed that participation in our community does not depend on memberships or donations, and we do not hide our episodes behind a paywall. We want everyone to have the opportunity to learn and share our important content with others. Dave and I both offer services which may make your journey more fulfilling, and I offer some products as well. Our sales and services are what provide us with the means to continue our work, as there are many expenses associated with our mission. Check out our offerings to find that which resonates with you to help create a win-win situation. What I mean by that is financial support to help cover our expenses, but also some great products and services to give you that edge that you've been looking for. Check out my online shop, www.karenholtonhealthcoach.com, to find Zendome's orgone generators, comfort crystals, and an array of vital services, all designed to help you to become the change that you wish to see in the world. Now, more than ever, people are awakening to a world we never imagined possible. In response, Dave and I are offering tools, methods, and podcast content to assist you with your awakening process. You are not alone, and there is still much we can do to support our health, emotions, and our spirituality. We both combine ancient wisdoms with cutting-edge technology to help bring comfort to your body, happiness to your mind, and joy to your spirit. To assist you with your life journey, check out my website and find many valuable resources. There's the 9 Steps to Quantum Health Transformation. This is a free, comprehensive online course. Learn about detoxification and nutrition, grounding and spiritual practices, and an advanced version of the law of attraction, giving you more of what you really want out of life. I also have my Zendome's Orgonite, which is my unique brand of orgone generators. They're ethically sourced and handmade by a friend of mine, and they're double charged for maximum effect. I also carry comfort crystals, which is a limited collection of energetically infused semi-precious stones. I have an array of vital services, so you can get the one-on-one support that you've been looking for. Also coaching, guidance, and I do assessments and also workshops. And then again, there are the many free resources available on my website. Wisdom to assist with energetic ascension into physical, mental, and spiritual paradise. Also, check out Dave's services. Dave can teach you about astrology and spiritual concepts. principles of Eastern medicine, birth charts, relationship matching, spiritual guidance, fasting, and his unique approach to health. You can find Dave's services on his Facebook page, Instagram at Dave Petrella 12, and his YouTube channel. The links can be found in the description box below. Let us share our quantum work with you. It's your turn to heal, evolve, and thrive. Believe in your ability to succeed. Now, let's get back to the show. Okay, we're back with Dave Petrella and Karen Holton, and Dave is going to do his share of the presentation, and then we'll just sort of wrap it all together at the end, and hopefully you've learned a lot, because I know I'm learning all the time. I just love it. So Dave, let's do a screen share. Should I pull up the first image, or did you want to say something first?
No, I'm about ready, Karen. It's where I just left off before the commercial was a perfect segue in terms of there's really the three components that you need, which I would feel very comfortable saying they're pre-religion components, they're pre-cultural components. They're actually shared in common with really all of the ancient world systems, and it's astrology, it's biology or physiology, and it's the spirituality part of it. And so what I'm going to be doing is talking about dimensions in relation to those three disciplines, essentially, and trying to tie them together for everyone as simple as possible, because I actually do believe in being as, I don't even know if it's a word, but as unconvoluted as possible. It's very important for me to have things clear and simple. I want to be as simple as possible, both for myself and for viewers, because even when I see something, I just want to, get all your thoughts focused before you say it, and then have that be everything. I like it to be short and sweet every time I do teaching modules. Okay, so what we have here in the beginning is, I believe this is it's the Vedic Hindu cosmology system. This one in particular comes out of ancient India, of course. And this is illustrating what is called, and you'll already see, of course, you'd seen Karen's presentation in the beginning here. You're already going to see a similarity in structure in terms of you see, an axis going through the center, and then you see a top portion and a bottom portion. That's, it's the Taurus field, it's the inverted triangles, it's the Star of David, it's the Merkaba, it's all the same thing. It's actually exactly the same thing. Maybe the best way to think about it is actually a Taurus field, because that's how energy actually it works. Essentially, you got the source at the center, and then you have the top portion, and then the bottom portion. There's the intake and the outtake. Of course, it's the same exact thing Karen was eloquently saying in a previous part of this presentation. So anyway, this is called the cosmic axis. I think the Hindu system, they believe, calls it Mount Meru, which is the axis at the center of the Earth. This one in particular is a depiction of a flat Earth model. And so the flat Earth is at the very center. It's the disk at the very center of this model. And then you see the axis going through the vertical portion, right through the center of that disk. And that's called the world tree or the cosmic axis or Mount Meru. They're all essentially all the same, identical topics, systems. And so what this does in this one right here is that this breaks down, the first level, I would say, it breaks down the planetary spheres. The planetary spheres are also essentially just the dimensions. So since this is a dimension presentation, you could actually just say this is a model of the solar system as it pertains to the dimensions of the solar system. And the dimensions of the solar system, the way I teach it, is that each planet is the governing body of one of the dimensions. And as I mentioned before, I include 21 dimensions in the entire system. That number actually comes up a fair amount if you look, in the ancient world. And it's, of course, 7 times 3, which is another wonderful way to separate it into, essentially 3. You could say it's a composite of 3 chakra systems of 7. I actually am very comfortable with that topic. I have not worked with it that way, but I would fully support anyone working with that for a particular way of describing the system. Now, the way that I do it is, like I said, in the middle, that's the Earth plane. And that's Earth, by the way, has the same exact letters as the word heart. And the heart is at the center of the body. And in the ancient world, the Earth was also at the center. And then above the Earth are the 10 planetary spheres, and then or dimensions. And then below the Earth is the same corresponding. Again, it's the inversion principles that you have the positive attributes, quote unquote positive, and then the negative attributes would be below the Earth. Or the other way to say it is that the 10 heavens are above the Earth and the 10 hells are below the Earth. And then another way to say it actually is, if you were to take the electromagnetic spectrum, which we probably, I guess most of us learned in secondary school, and it's usually, on a horizontal axis, the way that it's actually described, and at the center is visible light spectrum. Well, what I actually have done since the beginning, since I started teaching this, was I just actually take that horizontal system and I turn it 90 degrees. So it's actually vertical like this. And now what you have is, at the very center, you have the visible light spectrum, which is represented by the Earth and the 7 colors, which gives us the visible light spectrum, which is what we can actually see. And then above that, you have the high energy light, which is, of course, you got UV light, and then you have X-rays and then gamma rays. Those would be the heavens. Those form the higher dimensions. And then conversely, below you have infrared, which means just below red, which is essentially heat. And then you have microwaves and then radio waves. And so all of these, it's like we've been talking about since the beginning of the show, and we've done a lot with this topic, actually, Karen, over the past, half year or so, that it's all energy. I mean, I think every one of my friends in the alternative, science community and similar topics would probably agree with that it's everything in the universe is energy. You just have to figure out how it's structured. And what the structure of the energy gives you the different units, if you will, of how it's broken and organized again. So I guess the best way to continue with this is that this is the system of astrology I teach. It's called Western astrology. It's from Egypt and Mesopotamia region. I believe there's a lot of sharing of ideas back and forth. It may have actually originated in Mesopotamia at first. I actually don't know. I've tried to follow it so many times. These symbols come from Babylon, supposedly. The astrology symbols of your sign, Aries has the horns like this with the face of the ram coming down. That's one example. But a lot of the principles also, I think a lot of people would say, come from Egypt. So it's probably likely a composite, but it's very, very functional, and it works 100% accurate if you know how to interpret it. So anyway, this system is broken up for the solar system and for the dimensions into the planets, the planetary spheres. So you have the Earth at the center, then you have, of course, the Moon, Mercury, Venus, then you have the Sun, then you have Mars and Jupiter and Saturn. Those are the 7 traditional planets, the 7 traditional gatekeepers of the 7 dimensions. And as of course I said, you also have the inverse. So technically, like, the moon is the positive side, but the dark moon, which is actually astrology, a term in astrology, would be the inverse side of that. They are essentially equal and opposite dimensions. One is in the heavenly realm, one is in the hellish realm. And all 10 of the planets have their counterpart. That's what makes the 20, actually, the positive and their counterparts, plus the mid dimension, which is Earth. That's 21. Okay, so then what you have above 7, you have Uranus, which rules the fixed stars. That's where the zodiac exists. That's the 8th sphere, or the 8th dimension. The way I teach it, the 9th dimension is Neptune, ruled by Neptune, which is the crystalline sea, which essentially I like to describe it as it's a shimmering portal that surrounds our solar system that actually keeps it as a contained unit, and with specific laws and specific disciplines and things that are intact. And because they were structured that way, by the way, it's not an accident. It was actually designed to be that way. And then the 10th sphere, or the 10th planet, traditionally is Pluto. Sometimes I talk about it as potentially being Nibiru, or a counterpart to our sun, which would be like a dead star. That's another one that's come up recently a lot. And so in that one, I just want to give a shout out to Matt LaCroix. He's the person that I learned that from, and I'm very thankful. And I would love to have him on the show sometime too, Karen. That
Oh,
would
I
be
agree.
fantastic.
Agree.
He does
He's
great
great.
work. Great work. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so those are the 10 traditional. If you want to see this in architecture, you know, Chichen Itza and the Mayan Yucatan Peninsula, there is a 10-step pyramid. So and we have, how many fingers do we have? Of course, 10. So the 10 is 9 plus the completion element, essentially. And the 9, there's actually the 9 that are talked about in Egypt. It's called the Ennead. The Mayans also have their 9 gods. This is what they're talking about. They're talking about either the realm or dimension itself, or a representative from one of the realms or dimensions, or it could be both. I mean, it can vary for sure. But this is the basic structure, basic model of the astrology that I teach. It is based on the Earth being at the center. And like I said, you know, well, the Norse, they call the Earth Midgard, which is the middle garden, because it's in the middle, because it is, according to the ancient models, in the middle. And then, of course, you got the 10 dimensions above, 10 below. So I just want to add one more thing with this slide. So since we're on Earth right now, you know, our physical bodies are, or you could call them our avatars. I feel very comfortable with that term as well. The spirit gets to go inside of an avatar and experience life through that vehicle, I'll put it that way. So the spirit might be radically different from the physical appearance, or from what kind of body you're given. If you're given a human body or an animal body, there's all possibilities around the table, I believe. And that's what gives us our points and counterpoints, and allows us to learn, and also to pay karma and all of these kinds of things, and to experience. So let's see here. So this model is okay. So if you're, since we're on Earth, we're in the middle dimension here, according to this model. You're actually living in the mid dimension. However, you have mental access, and not just mental access, you potentially could have visual access and audio access and every other sensory access that exists, many of which I'm probably not even aware of, although I probably had glimpses of many of them. While you're in the Earth dimension physically, you can have access to the other dimensions in a non-local sensory sort of way. So you can be living on the Earth, and you can be pulling your primary mental structure, or your primary mental organization, from one of the higher dimensions. So you're in a physical body, which means that you live locally on the Earth, but your mental structure and your mental dimension may be a different dimension. And that's actually part of what explains why sometimes we talk to someone and it's like they're literally not in the same world as we are. And that would be, for me, the easiest explanation why, because they're actually living in a different mental world that's represented by a different dimension. So they can bring that mental dimension down and enact it into the physical dimension that they're in, or that we're in. And again, it's all fractal. And so let's just give one more example. If you happen to be living not in a physical body, you know, a somewhat, say, more etheric body, if you lived in like the 4th dimension, which would be the dimension of the sun, then you would probably not be, you would be very, very, very much less physical, first off. Be more beautiful, things would be easier to do, there'd be less roadblocks in life, things would probably be more enjoyable. And so your body would look different. But then if you decided to, you could still pull the Earth dimension mental state and enact that in the 4th dimension, where you're actually existing as a body. So all of these, literally, and it's all fractal, it's all the same thing we were talking about. So we have access to all of these dimensions, and these are just the local dimensions. This is what I would say are the dimensions of our solar system. But then when you start talking about high-level quantum physics and accessing dimensions outside of our solar system, then you're talking really, well, you can have portals inside too, but to get outside the solar system, you're definitely going to need some kind of a portal, very high energy portal or conduit. because there's not a limit. I mean, if you have that capacity, a human being can certainly do that. You can pull information from outside of the solar system. I believe I do that on a regular basis a lot. Most of my information probably is not coming from our solar system. We have to remember that our solar system in the Milky Way galaxy is about 2/3 of the way out from the center, the central sun, which is not particularly great. I mean, you want to, in terms of high level consciousness, you want to be closest to the star as possible. So that explains some of why we're struggling right now. And, there's large cycles of time. We will get closer. Dimensions will be upgraded and downgraded. And I believe that's actually happening right now. That's why there's so much intensity and confusion in certain parts of the world and in our consciousness now. So anyway, yeah, this is the model of the solar system. It's the model of the dimension system. And in this instance, it's showing you how the larger dimensions are structured, which is, we have the ability to participate in any of these 21 plus anything outside of the solar system if we have that ability and or that gift. So I think we probably go to the next slide, Karen. If you want to add anything, feel free.
Okay, I'm just going to stop the share for a minute, make sure the recording is still going good. Yes, it is. And the next one is slide number 2. That one?
Yep, sure. This is one actually that I actually already explained, which is flipping the electromagnetic spectrum vertically. And it shows you from a physics standpoint how what I'm saying actually makes a lot of sense. I don't even have to stretch it. It's actually it's like put right in front of us. Dimensions are organized by different wavelengths. Karen already talked about how they can flash in and out and everything. And I had mentioned that's a way of phasing in between dimensions, moving in and out. And it's also the way that you're able to obscure certain visual spectrums from view. So, we're in a room, we can only see well, I guess not, that's not necessarily true. I can only see in the visual light spectrum, I think. Maybe that's not correct. I could probably see more than that. But I would say a standard human being are supposed to be able to see in the visual light spectrum. I do know animals can see things for sure outside of the visual light spectrum because I've watched them watching something intently on the wall or the ceiling, and I'm sure you've seen this, Karen, too, right?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Like, oh, I get down to their level so I can make sure I have their perspective, and I'm basically laying on the floor trying to look up at what they're. No, I don't see anything up there, but I know they see something. So the point is that you have we have limited visual capacity, limited auditory capacity, limited actually most of our senses because of by virtue of the mid-level dimension we live in. And so what that means is that there's all kinds of energy around us, and we know this. I mean, when you turn on your radio, the reason that works is because there's radio waves all around you, and you're able to receive that and translate it into sound. So, but you can't see them visually, but they are there. It's the same thing with like gamma radiation that's coming off the sun, or an X-ray machine that's coming. We can't see these things. We can feel the effects. And then when you start talking about the spirit world, it becomes particularly important for me when I talk about that concept, because spirits come in different bodily forms. And if there happened to be an angel in the room, I would say is very strongly it's probably made up of gamma rays, and it's going to be very strong, potentially very healing. It could potentially be very destructive too, but that's only because of the differential and the integrity of the body structure. If the only reason that gamma rays, UV rays can hurt us is because we're not as strong as they are. That's the whole point. It's not because they're inherently bad. They're actually not bad at all. But it's because our bodies are made of a much less energy, and so the stronger predominating energy takes, the control of the system, of the energy system. And that's why it would hurt, quote unquote, hurt us as humans being physical. So if you feel something good in a room, I would say it's made up of energy higher than you, probably. If you feel something negative in the room, I would say it's probably made up of energy that's less. But here's the other thing that's important is you can have, this is very important. You can have varying, I believe it's the amplitude, which is the frequency, if I'm not mistaken. I need to revisit this probably, but basically you can have some and I've experienced this, unfortunately. I really, I do ask for protection when I go into difficult energy situations since this has happened a few times. But basically you can have some very powerful malevolent spirits. And let's say, I don't personally think they're made of gamma light, because that would be the heavenly kind of light. They're made up of very, very powerful high frequency, say like radio signals or radio light or microwave light, things like this, even infrared possibly. But
That
some
would
of them,
that would explain those spirit boxes where they're picking up radio signals, or they're picking up, yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. So you just could figure that, there's spirits who have various density levels of bodies in all of the dimensions. And most of us probably can't see them because we can only see in the visual light spectrum, which is a very, 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 it's actually an amazingly small part of the entire electromagnetic spectrum.
Yeah.
So they're all around us. I think you'd agree with me, Karen, on that. We just can't see them or can't perceive them. Sometimes with equipment, like you mentioned, we can. But this is just a basic way of describing, from a science standpoint, it's a very easy way to describe it, how energy is structured. I mean, this is also the Taurus field. They're always the same concepts. It's all syncretic. So it's going to put together the opposing principles and then, put it together with the neutral principle, and then you have the completion. And that's always what the universe seeks to do, is to make things whole or complete.
Yep, I agree.
Okay, no, that's good. Yep, so that covers this one.
Okay, let's just go back to here. Number 3, right there.
Okay, so this one is kind of the flow chart that I was talking about previously. Is that if we've never seen the corresponding principles next to each other before, then it might be hard for us to really conceptualize or to get a good grip on that, to think about it. Now this chart, it's showing, it's actually a little small on my screen here, but basically I said human body chakra system. So on the left side, you have from 1 to 10, which I'd already explained. The bottom 7 chakras are the ones that exist that Karen had already described. Starts with the root chakra all the way to the crown chakra. And then the system I use has 8, 9, and 10, which would be above the head. They're not visible at that point. But I would say they're definitely up there. That gives us access to the more galactic and cosmic levels, the much higher, further out kind of places. And so that's 1 through 10. As I'd mentioned, that's also inverted. You get 1 through 10, negative 1 through 10, you could say, going the other way. And then the middle dimension, which would be the earth in between, which would be separating the heavens and the hells. So I actually believe this earth plane is what you would call purgatory. I've actually believed that since well before I got involved with spirituality. But if you think about it, I would say that you do see a pretty equal representation of positive and negative on this planet. It's fairly evenly matched, I feel. Also with the spirits who are allowed in, you have about half positive, half not so positive. And that's how it's been my experience my entire life. So the next column is, I believe, the colors, right, Karen? Is that what I put there?
Yes. Well, it runs next to the red chakra. It goes silver, orange is Mercury, yellow, copper, green, gold, like that.
Okay, so I'm going to go over the colors first. Karen already has shown several diagrams of the chakra colors. Of course, it's the same colors of the rainbow. It's in the same order. That's how visible light is structured. And again, in our solar system, maybe in our local universe too. But one of the biggest take-home points I want people to always remember, that according to what I believe, like I mentioned before, absolutely anything is possible. But in the universe, including you can organize laws differently, you can have things be polarized if you want. But that's not how our system is. So we have to understand what we're working with in order to have the highest level of success. And then you're actually working with the system instead of working against it and then complaining or wondering why you're being hurt or why it's not working. And if we spend time with the principles, we can actually figure it out. So starting at red, going all the way up to violet, Karen already mentioned the 1 through 7. And then let's see here.
Sorry, Dave. Yeah, the color.
That's okay.
I'm sorry. I read you the middle column where it has the metals.
Dream world. Okay, right. So in 8, above this, I put the mind, which I already talked about. That's the fixed stars ruled by Uranus. And then above that, we've got, of course, the dream world, which is ruled by Neptune. And then you have, and I guess you could say these might be more like a UV color system at this point. Either way, it's going to be spectacularly colorful in ways that you've never, basically like colors you've never seen on Earth. Because there are many, I'm sure you'd agree with me, Karen, there's many visual types of things we've never seen.
Yeah.
Neon can't even really touch it. It's like a brilliant. Anyway, so these would be supernatural colors in these zones up here. And then of course 10 would be freedom. That's when you have access to the rest of the, say, the local galaxy maybe, or you can move to between solar systems instead of being in this one. Okay, then the third column, we have each of the dimensions or the chakras, because they're all the same. That's really the point that I want to bring home too, is that the solar system is organized in the exact same way as the human body. This is the as above, so below principle. And so when you start talking about dimensions, you have the dimensions within your body as well. And that's what I was talking about when you have access to these dimensions. If you're living locally in, say, the Earth dimension, depending on basically where you're focusing your consciousness, you can direct it to different chakras. That's one way to do it. At a certain point, especially as you age, you really have to work on getting the fluids clean, which is one of the things that I teach. It's essentially pre-Ayurvedic medicine. It has to do with flushing your fluids, making sure the energy is flowing without any blockages. That's what brings health and vitality. And so we have access to all of these dimensions, again, within our body. And that's how the cosmic axis, the first diagram I showed everyone, the cosmic axis in the body is the spine, or it's a spinal column, or it's the chakra system. It's all the same thing. We have that same, and even the planets are anchored at the different chakras, depending on which one is corresponding. So for instance, the first one is the moon, first chakra, and the color is red. And imagine that, because you have menstruation, you have the moon cycles, of course, for women, and these concepts, they're all lockstep with each other. The color is there for a reason. The moon is there for a reason. How about this one? I've been seeing this over and over because I've been on the road researching for the past 2 months, as Karen knows and some of you may know. But the word monument, mon is referring to moon. Guess what ment is referring to? The mind. That's the cosmic axis. That's the spine. It's giving an ode to that. It's saying from the moon to the ment, or to the mental, and that's that's why the monuments are often pillars, and structures like that, just like the spine, just like the world axis, because they're all the same system. Mm-hmm. Okay, so then each of the dimensions or chakras, it's all the same. They all correspond evenly across like that. They each have a metal associated with them, starting with silver with the moon, and I'll let everyone read the rest of them. And even 8, 9, and 10 have, I believe, I didn't put it on here, but I believe the week that I spent trying to figure this out, and I kind of had to leave it. It's one of those things where I said, okay, I feel comfortable with this, but I'm not necessarily completely sure of it. The 8th is supposed to be zinc, I believe, which was very important in the ancient world as well. And then 9 is supposed to be cobalt blue, beautiful, beautiful color. And then the 10th is bismuth, which is I encourage people to look up bismuth. It's a very supernatural looking element. I mean, it's iridescent, it's fractal, it looks like a cube, it looks like it's an alien technology. It's absolutely amazing. It's like iridescent, it's just unbelievable element there, bismuth. That one's supposed to be number 10. For the metals. Okay, so then the last column is, okay, well, I already mentioned this, is the planets, of course, and starting with the moon, going all the way up to Saturn. And of course, past that, you've got Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, or Nibiru sometimes, or the Dead Star, depending on which way we're looking at it. So that's the correspondence table. I would encourage people to, you know, pause that or you know, whatever. This is, I'm giving this information for free. It is that important. It is what I believe is the baseline way of explaining our world. Therefore, it's that important. You know, if we get the baseline structure intact, and we can see how all of, I could add the notes here. I didn't add the notes of the scale. You know, the days of the week, which are, there's 7, of course. It's the same thing. These are the bottom 7. And anyway, so when we get our basic framework in place, then we have access to pretty much everything we need. You know, and if people have other ways of looking at it and they seem to be working for them, great. You know, I'm not trying to take someone away from a system that works for them. This is the best way that I found that is able to, and this is the key here, it's able to incorporate literally everything within one system. And that's, I have Santos Bonacci again to thank for that, because I had never ever seen this stuff before 2010. And I was wondering why I had never had access to this when I was in middle school or high school, because it could have prevented 5 years of me trying to figure out what to study, Karen, you know, all of these missed connections and missed questions and all this misinformation and everything. So what I'm hoping is that for the new generations, and even for people who have been on the earth for longer, is that, you know, if you've never seen this before, spend some time with it, really. And it should make a lot of good, clear sense. It's not stretching. None of these concepts are stretching anything. And if you go back and pick your favorite culture, try to fit in the principles to, you know, a table like this, or try to fit in their principles to the cosmic axis, and you're going to see where it all comes in. I mean, as I'd mentioned the Norse, you know, their world tree is called Yggdrasil and Midgard. It's the middle garden. You know, they knew that the earth was in the middle, just like every other ancient culture. Okay, so that's that one, Karen. I think we got one more slide.
Yeah, we only, believe it or not, we only have like 10 minutes left. I'm sorry, Dave. I don't know where the time has gone.
Plenty of time, plenty of time.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, now this slide is probably one of my favorites, because it's something that most people probably have not seen before. And actually, it was many months ago when me and Karen had first started working together that I just came up in conversation, you know, and this is what I'm saying about just, I encourage people to listen to people's stories, listen to people's perspectives, even that people that are different than you, and you never know what's going to come out of that. And one of the things Karen had said was she brought up this number of 144. And it's the fire signs, right, Karen, in the system that you're using?
Yeah.
Okay, so this number is part of the baseline structure, essentially, of the entire solar system. It is that important. First thing I want to say is 12 times 12, which is 144, and we know there's 12 signs in the zodiac. That's one of the most important base numbers would be 12, because of course it's the zodiac. The other one would be 10, because that's the number of the dimensions according to the model I teach. And the other one would be 7, because that's the number of basic chakras. And really, I mean, really, they're all extremely important. But 5 is the 5 elements, 4 is the 4 cardinal directions, 3 is the Trinity, you know, 2 is dualism, and then 1 is the unity principle. That's kind of how I explain that. And actually, if you want to find the truth, we should really be looking at mathematics in terms of structure. That's where you're going to find your truth of the structure. The numbers will not lie to you. I can pretty much guarantee that, if you're looking at them correctly. Okay, so the other thing about 144, I believe it's the Mayans, and with their calendar, they had I believe it's called the Baktun, which is 144,000 days. It's one of their time segments, how they measure time. Of course, we find 144,000 in the book of Revelation, with 144,000 that will be sealed on the forehead and will be delivered from the earth at the end times. And so the question is, where is this coming from? You know, why is this so important? Oh, the other thing too, before I forget, is that precession, of course, in astrology, which is the apparent slippage of the time cycle, it's 1 degree out of 360 degrees for every 72 years. So 72 is half of 144. So, you can see they all mesh and they all actually integrate within each other. And the biggest one for me is actually what Karen had already brought up, essentially, is that there are supposed to be 144,000 energy output points along your chakra system. The one that we're familiar with are just the 7. We say 7 chakras. However, if you look at this picture closely, and the Hindus have always talked about the chakras as having petals, petals, like a flower, like a rose petal. And again, this petal concept is what Karen was talking about with secondary chakras. The way I'm describing it is fractal patterns or fractal chakras. They're contained within each other. Even the dimensions are nested within each other. So fractal science is a part of, it's the baseline of our grid in the solar system, is what I would say. So what you have here is the 7 chakras. You can see them. They each have their corresponding petals. And it turns out that the bottom 6 chakras add up to 144 petals. And the top chakra, which is called the crown chakra, is 1,000 petals. And this is what the Hindus mean by the 1,000-petaled lotus flower. I believe they refer to it being on the top of the head sometimes. It's because there's 1,000 output points in that chakra, which are energy output points. Again, it's all about energy. So what happens is that the bottom 6, when it actually reaches the pineal gland area, it gets multiplied by 1,000 because it's 1,000 times more powerful than the bottom chakras, and you end up with 144,000. So some of the references in the Bible, which is particularly important, one of the things I'm working on right now is some of the Bible principles and the stories and alternate stories from the Bible, is that when you talk about 144,000 being saved, and this is the thing too, is that oftentimes it's on many different levels of meaning. And I used to try to be like, oh, I just need to figure out which one it is. Well, then I realized it's actually all of them. And it depends, again, on your mental state, on your dimensional state, on your dimensional access state, which timeline is going to apply to you, which one is true. Sometimes they're all true no matter which dimension you're in. And I think this is one of those times, in my opinion, is that according to the Judeo-Christian, let's say the Christian principle, because it's in the New Testament, the book of Revelation, there'll be 144,000 people saved at the end times. And a lot of people, in fact, believe that's a literal number. And the thing that I try to add to the story is that the original teaching, way, 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 way back, is that we need to manage our own energy. We need to achieve our divine form ourselves. We have the capacity to become creators, just like God is a creator. And I would be careful how I say this, we have the capacity to become gods. That does not mean that you do evil things or you do questionable things. I think this solar system has been set up to try to ensure that people, or I was going to say people, it's any spirit that gets to that state has passed the tests, so to speak. And that's why the planets are the gatekeepers, because the universe doesn't want a spirit to get to that level if they're not fully responsible and they can't be trusted to do benevolent things always, always.
Sure.
Only good things. That's why this system has been structured this way, Karen, is what I believe. So working with I'll just wrap it up with this. Karen was talking about, of course, the Kundalini awakening, the symptoms, ascension symptoms, which are definitely real. It could be, of course, it could also be a medical issue. I would encourage people to go and get an evaluation first, just as a cross check, just to make sure everything's okay. Then at that point, if they say everything's good, then yeah, you might be experiencing some pretty serious ascension symptoms. And those are true symptoms. I've experienced almost all of the ones that you listed, Karen. So the big idea with 144,000 for me is that regardless of if the story from the Bible is true or not, I can tell you that one thing is true, is that at the end of the day, we're responsible for managing the energy in our own bodies. We're responsible for the output coming out of our own bodies and our own hearts and our own minds. And what we're projecting out, essentially, usually just you get back in equal measure. And it's difficult to deal with solid mediums being, carbon. Of course, the physical matter is particularly difficult. Even the fluids are difficult. If we didn't have, that's a serious limiting factor in our dimension. And again, it's on purpose to make us focus on certain principles and try to improve us, is that we can't just run energy cleanly through our bodies, because it has to go through liquid medium. Then it has to go through solid medium. So the energy can't just go in and be used. It has to actually move through much, much denser matter. And that's where Ayurveda comes in, the principles from pre-Ayurvedic medicine, which is, really refining the fluids in your body and improving the flow. And you will have health and disease. And if you're willing to go far enough and you understand, eventually you do have ascension, which is not just mental ascension, it's actually bodily ascension. And that's also what the great teachers have always taught on this planet. They taught bodily ascension, including Jesus, Osiris, Krishna, Buddha, all of these people. For me, I feel very strongly they knew these principles, and they knew about fasting, and they knew about refining the fluids. And I'd like to get that back in front of people, because without that, especially as you age, you lose a lot of mental ground. We all know we lose physical ground, of course, mental ground too. And you lose your ability a lot of times to be creative, to have a lot of natural joy, relaxation. You lose a lot of your connection to higher dimensions. Sometimes it's very sad. Sometimes people end up moving through lower dimensions, and they end up with attachments and stuff just because they don't know how to run energy in their bodies properly. If you break up that fluid, when it's stagnated, eventually those things will disappear. You have to get it moving. And then you're the one that can decide. Instead of having spirits come to you, you're the one that decides if you're going to invite them or not the other way around. We have to take it back, Karen, ourselves, and say, I'm going to stand up for myself. I love myself. I believe in myself, and I love other people, and I want to care for the people around me. And you're not going to, we can, but without the scientific principles, the proper scientific principles, especially of biology and physiology, we're only working with like 20% of the information. You can, we all know if you have alcohol or, even smoking various things, it is a pretty immediate effect in the body. It's a chemical physiological effect. And there's actually no amount of rationalization or trying to explain things or deduce things from situations and trying to figure out the nature of the universe that's going to supersede what happens when you actually refine your fluids. When you refine your fluids, everything happens actually naturally in the proper form. You don't need the rationalization anymore, because you actually are able to achieve that balance in a physiological level. And that in turn makes you able to access much higher dimensional information, and improves your cellular structure, upgrades your body, and it will allow you to experience ascension, as I had said before, if you take it far enough.
Wonderful, wonderful stuff. Dave, we're out of time. I want to tell our viewers, I want to thank you very much for joining us for the show, and tell you that all the links for Dave or for myself will be in the description below. And again, please do check out our group, Aliens and Astrology, on Facebook. And we look forward to doing the next show. As we mentioned, Dave's been traveling, doing research. And we will have a show in September, and then we will get on to our regular schedule in October, where we're going to have at least 2 shows a month. Often we'll try to alternate between Dave and I giving presentations and discussing current affairs and things that are of interest. And then we'll also have a guest each month. And I think that'll all be very, very interesting. So thank you, Dave, and thank you to all the viewers for joining us. And we can't wait to see you again on the next episode of Aliens and Astrology. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining Dave and I for the Aliens and Astrology Show. Become the change you want to see in the world. Subscribe to our YouTube channels, click the like button, and share this show with your friends. Check out Karen's website at KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com. All the links will be in the description box below. Until the next time, keep up the good work.
Well, you challenge my perception. I shift uneasily as I try to justify how I value your suggestions. Ideas full of life when I'm empty of my own. And 5 minutes before I was okay, now the curtain drops to the floor. Leaves me weak and begging for more. When I think I get it, it flutters and vanishes away.